See, when I met you, you only had worked, you had probably retired by then, and only were working in the shop, the piano shop, and I guess I thought that's what you did all the time, so.
No, I was a toolmaker, master toolmaker for years.
Wow.
That led into being a production engineer, and I ended up as a production engineer, writing processes for the stuff to go through the machine shops and like that. Now, I was all in government work. So I had to have I was had to be checked by the federal government for some of the work that I was doing because it was highly secret.
So you had a security clearance then? Oh, wow.
Well, I didn't know that. Well, see, things we learn.
And how long did Grandma work for the newspaper?
20 years, I guess. Okay. A little longer.
And what did she do at the newspaper?
Oh, she was a secretary, really a secretary.
Okay.
And she had charge of different operations. She was more like the head of the office.
Okay. I knew she was the jack of all trades there because I know they really missed her when her eyesight went. So that's an important job.
Well, let's get down to the family history. What year were you born in, Grandpa?
1907.
Okay. What was your father's name?
John Andrew Ruhl.
And your mother?
Zeta Rilla Phelps Ruhl.
How many brothers and sisters did you have?
I had a brother that was born dead. I didn't have any living brothers. I was the only boy, and then there was the three girls, Gladys and Shirley and shoot, now you got me.
That's fine.
Gladys and Shirley and
Choice.
Lois Jean.
Yeah.
Where did you fit in as far as, were you the oldest or?
I was the oldest child in my family. I had a brother that was born dead that would have been older than me.
What did your father do?
My father was a railroader and he worked on the wrecking crew for years and in the shops out there where they repaired the box cars and things like that needed repairs and all of that. And he was cook on the wreck crew. He did the cooking for them when they were out.
Now, did you say he was a railroad detective, or was that your grandfather?
My father, was born in Ohio, and he was acted as kind of a sheriff, county sheriff or something like that, and he till he came to Richmond. When he came to Richmond, then he first started out in the Star Piano Company, and he didn't like that, and he got back on the railroad again.
Did your mother work?
Yeah,
Oh.
but now wait a minute, my mother. I don't remember her working any place. My wife worked, my mother, she was a good cook and all of that, and she did she helped out on cooking schools and things like that, came to town. And in fact, she had a chance to be a chef in Cleveland. There was people came in with a cooking school, and one of the fellows at the church worked for the paper, and he recommended her to help out at the cooking school. And they were so well impressed, they tried to get her to take a job in Cleveland and cooking for different clubs and things like that. She wouldn't go because she said she had a family here, and we needed her worse than they needed to cook.
So where did you learn how to play piano?
Where did I learn?
Yeah.
Here in Richmond.
Okay. Who taught you, or did you just pick it up on your own?
Well, I had some piano lessons, but I was already picking up tunes and things like that. And I had a few piano lessons from me and my sister took lessons from a next door neighbor's mother, who was a piano player. But I didn't have very many lessons.
Just picked it up by ear?
Well, I picked it up by, I guess you would say I played by ear sometimes, still do. I actually studied music from some pretty good teachers.
Now, did you start out on the piano, or I know you played the accordion. Now, when did the accordion?
I never had any lessons on the accordion, but I was a piano player long before I picked up the accordion.
Okay, let's see. So you grew up here in Richmond?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where else was it for me to go?
Well, I'm just that's right, you've been here all your life and never seen a tornado.
There's been a tornado went through here.
Yeah, we were here that day. That was the day that Amy was bouncing off the walls in your trailer.
Yeah, I heard the grandpa just went and sat in his chair.
Now, the Great Depression, how did that affect you any?
Well, it meant we ate government surplus meats and things like that. I remember going down to the place where they would doling out the government meat, and I come back with something about this long, about this big around, and when I got it opened up, it was a ton.
Oh.
Oh, that's surplus.
Yeah, what is surplus?
And we didn't know, Mommy didn't know how to cook it, and somebody said, ain't you gonna eat it? We said, no, it looks too bloody to us. It was, it had been kept in storage and everything. I had to wash an inch of mold off of the outside of it, but it was good meat, and somebody wanted it real bad, and we gave it to them.
Now, were you working all those years, or was?
Well, how do you suppose I made a living?
Well, I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I know a lot of people were unemployed. But...
Well, actually, back when Mommy and I were married, we were married in 1929, and the middle of 1931, the Great Depression was on us, and we were getting surplus meat and things like that from the count, that is, the government, federal government. And somehow we had to wash 2 or 3 inches of mold off of the outside of it, but that didn't hurt it, you know.
Was Richmond in general affected by the unemployment, or, you know, I know some areas was worse than others, and
Well, the whole United States was affected by it, and some were worse than others. I had a job, but there were times when they were selling lawnmowers, I wouldn't work. I wouldn't work maybe only 6 months out of the year.
mm.
So I did actually work my way into a machine shop job, and I worked my way up to a master machinist.
Now, when did you meet Grandma, and where?
When and where?
Yeah.
I met her at church. I'd read about her in the paper when she was 12 years old. She was sister to Paul Crane, who was kind of he was a musician, and we all looked up to him. Those of us who studied music or anything like that. But I didn't know him personally until after I'd met Betty. And somebody, one of the gals at the church was kind of jealous because her boyfriend kept telling about playing with Betty Craig, and this gal she thought he was talking too much about Betty Craig, so she went down to the high school and found out where Betty Craig's locker was, and she went down there and waited till Betty come back after the classes and put her books in her locker, and she invited Betty to come to church. and of course, Betty was living with her folks on North 12th Street, and they were in charge of the Union Mission down there. And so this girl was getting a little jealous of her, and she lived in Whitewater and was on her way to church to come back by there, and she picked up Betty and brought her to church. And so I saw Betty sitting over there and in one of the classes, and I thought she was pretty good looking, and I didn't know who she was. And so as soon as Sunday school was over, this girl come and got Betty and brought her over and introduced her to me right away. And that's how I met her. And we made arrangements to go to a amusement park on the Friday after that Sunday, and so that was really my first date with her when we all went out to that amusement park.
Now, about how old were you then?
I was about 20, 21, 22.
Okay,
Betty was 19,
okay.
18.
Aw, young love. That's neat.
So the rest is history.
That's neat.
Well, history got pretty wild there for a while.
Now, did you play the piano and during the Depression in local pubs or bars or,
I played in cocktail bars and restaurants. See, when I first learned to play the piano,
you played at church?
we were in that was when it was illegal to sell beer or anything like that. And then when that was changed, then of course I played in some speakeasies, and before it became legal,
Mm-hmm.
and when it became legal, then like I played for a lot of places where they sold beer.
What year did it become legal? I forget.
1932, I think it was.
Was it in 1924 when it became illegal?
Huh?
Was it 1924 when Prohibition started?
1920. We used to sing a song, 1920, there'll be Prohibition 20,
Mm-hmm.
and that was about the beginning of it.
Okay.
And
My Aunt Clara was a rum runner. She lived in Canada and would run rum up into the U.S. You know, she lived on Lake Erie, so she had some interesting things to tell about. She didn't drink, but she was able to supply it with her boat. So
well, you know, there was
that's how she supported her family.
There was a lot of people that I played in some bootlegging places before it was illegal to sell beer.
Uh-huh.
I remember we got a job to play for out there. Somebody was selling beer out in their country home, and so we got a job to play music for their little dance they was having it out there, and so when I showed up, the gal was really embarrassed because her mother was very, very religious in our church.
Oh.
I had a lot of fun.
Oh.
Funny things happen.
Yeah. Did that cause conflict with your church, playing in the church when you were playing at night?
No,
No, okay.
no, there would be a few people turn up their nose about if what I said. Well, one of the persons was pretty. She thought I shouldn't be playing, and her husband and her were in the awning business,
Mm-hmm.
and so she got on me one day, and I said, well, I said, I know that your husband is embarrassed because he put the awning over the place where I play it. I play under one of the awnings that he put in there. Oh, she says, I never knew.
The pot calling the kettle black.
She never got on me after that.
Yeah.
Were there any close calls with the police ever busting any of the places that you were at?
Well, yeah, I drove over to New Paris and at the hotel over there, and they had a liquor a bar and everything down in the basement of their hotel that was left over when it was legal to sell stuff, and so they were people was going over there on weekends, and so I was playing over there, and one night I went in there, and the sheriff was out there, and he said, you can't go in. He says, the federal people are here, and he said, you go over on National Road and tell the guys, people over there with businesses, the federal people are in town, and there were three of us in the car, and we went over, and they already knew it, federal people was gone. We went in and the floor was covered with about 4 to 5 inches of solid, where they busted all the beer kegs in there, and with liquor and beer and everything else in that, on that floor in there, and it was gonna take them a while to clear that out. And they had picked the beer mugs up, stepped back from the bar and thrown them into the big mirrors behind the bar. They busted the bar. Oh, it was a mess. When we first went in there, they said you can't go in there. The federal people there. Then they wanted us to go over and tell the guys over on National Road. There were several places over there, but they already knew about it, and they had carried their liquor stuff out and put it in the cornfield back there.
So the local police were pretty much, they turned their head the other way until the federals came?
Well, it was mainly a federal deal, and at one time, Indiana was dry, and Ohio was selling liquor, and people our government officials in Indianapolis would go through Richmond, going over to Ohio to get their liquor and stuff like that.
So you were probably too young for World War I.
Yeah, World War I was I was born in 1907, and World War I was 1921. So I wasn't old enough to go into service or anything like that. But the Second World War came along, and I was just about the age to be, well, I was sent a notice of a draft into the service, and the people that I worked for, they were into government work, and so I got a notice for draft, and they jumped in their car and went over to Indianapolis and got me cleared for that draft, so that I didn't have to go in. Well, some of the things we were making were just a thing about that long, with threads on one end and a hole going down into the other end of it inside, and they were for airplane cables, and they would put a cable in that hole in there, and then they'd swedge it down, and that was the end of a long cable for controlling airplanes and things like that. And it's, pilots needed levers to control the rudders and all that stuff.
You lucked out on that one then, huh?
Huh?
You lucked out on that one. Hello.
That's okay.
Sorry about this.
That's all right.
Well, how can you tell them people that your peoples that your victims are horrific?
Huh? What
He
you
doesn't
tell
say
them
that,
about?
okay. How come you didn't let them come and see this ugly background?
These are all of my
Peoples, I know. Grand, great grand.
Grand, great grand.
You got it.
Yeah.
They're all,
I already know the deal.
they're all better looking than I am, but
Well, see, you was a looker in your day too, from what you be telling me. If I were you, I'd turn up the air, turn down the
I
heat.
know, it's warm in here.
So when did you open your piano shop?
oh, let's see, I don't know exactly what date it was now, but it was, I got into it, there was a fair, state fair over in Indianapolis, and, I saw where they was gonna show the Kimball organ over there, and, Kimball was a brand new big organ, and I went over there, and Patty and I went over there, and so the guy that was showing it at the fair, the guy that was supposed to be playing it, hadn't showed up, and I took a look at the organ, and he said, would you like to play it? He said, would you mind playing? He said, till the guy that's supposed to be playing this thing shows up. And I sat down and started playing, and it wasn't very long till there was some guy standing there watching me play, and the guy that was supposed to be playing it hadn't showed up yet, and it came for a time for me to have a little bit of a break, and this guy come over and wanted to know if I would be interested in selling Kimball organs, and I said, I don't think I can afford to. Well, he said that I'd like to come over on a Wednesday to your place and see what you got. Well, I said, I've got a storeroom, but I said, it's not very big. I said, I probably couldn't handle more than one or two of your pianos and a couple of organs. And he came over, and the next thing I knew, I was in the piano business.
Now, how mad was Grandma at you? I said, how mad was Betty at you for
Well,
doing that? Was she mad?
No, because when I went over to the state fair, her sister was there, and her sister thought it was, she thought that to get into the piano business would be a good deal for me.
Okay.
And well, Betty was just a little bit shaky on some of those things. She didn't want to get into too deep.
Uh-huh.
But we made pretty good. In fact, paid for building a new building on the back of the lot, for the store.
Oh, good.
Now, what year was that you got started? Do you remember?
Now you're talking. I was married in 1930. I guess it was around 1936, someplace along there.
So you were doing it for a long time then?
Huh?
You were selling them for a good long time then?
But I've been a toolmaker for years.
Yeah, because that's where Dad got his drum set. His first drum set was from Grandpa Ruhl for Christmas.
And that's the one that's at the Methodist Church in Mayville now.
Somebody's still using that drum set.
Huh?
So someone is still using that drum set that you got for Steve
the
for
drum.
Christmas. Yeah. And we've upgraded since then.
Yeah, I remember when we upgraded.
Yep. Ruhl is a German name.
Yeah.
Do you remember how far back? I mean, who came to America, or?
Well, I don't know too much about that, but I do know that Ruhl is R-U-H-L is a German spelling, and the U in German has two dots over the U. So when it came to this country and that rule made you pronounce it as a roll, come down, roll, like that. That was German way of talking. And so we dropped the two dots because that made it look like R-I-H-L or I-E-H-L, and there are people that spell their names like that, R-I-E-R-I-E-H-L, and I think that they don't call it rule, but they call it there's an I and an E, Ruhl.
There's maybe distant cousins or something, or
Huh?
maybe distant cousins way back, and they just
Well,
way they changed the name when they came across.
Well, yeah, the root name up on it was I forget what the root name was now, but it all come down actually probably from Switzerland on down through the Rhine Valley and all that.
So your father wasn't the first one over. Did you know your
No.
grandfather?
I don't know who was the first rule over. It probably would have been my father's grandfather, probably something like that. We never went back that. My dad wasn't too much interested in ancestors or anything like that. People back in those days, they just took whatever name they got and that was it. But then they got to try and find out about their roots, and that's when they began to going back in and checking back.
How old was Uncle Gale when World War II? Was he ever affected by that, or he would still be too young, wouldn't he have been?
Oh, Gale was, let's see, he was born in 1930. And,
Yeah, so he'd been only 15 when it ended, so yeah. Well, he lucked out on that one.
well, he was in the service. And, because he was in the service and trained in Texas. And then he was transferred out to the East Coast then. So he was in the service pretty heavy.
Is that where he got into the law enforcement part?
Partly, he made acquaintance with somebody that, and of course he married a girl from Chicago, and so he had made some he had done some police work in Chicago, and so I never did know exactly how he got into the government work, but Gale didn't have any college education, and yet he passed a pretty stiff exam to get into the government work. But he was, of course, he was living in Chicago, Virginia was Chicago. He met her in the service.
I was always curious because Justin's always had a kind of wanted on the back burner to get into law enforcement, and that was the furthest thing from my mind. I just wondered,
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know whether you've ever heard this or not, but Gale was in the service, and he had arrested a guy, guy walked, but he told Gail, he said, he said, if you ever run across me again, he said, try to arrest me the next time, he said, it's gonna be you or me. And it turned out that way, that Gail drove, some of his agents were down around the building where their offices were, and they had made an arrest, and Gail went down there and one of the guys, well, whoever they were trying to arrest, somebody got them in a garden, and they started to run, and the federal agents that was in Gail's group, they started out chasing them. They went right down through the middle of Chicago, and chased them on a chase, and Gail was driving an old car, and he took out after him, and the guy they were chasing actually caused some agents to wreck their cars, and when it ended up, Gail was one left chasing, and they finally pulled off to one side of the road, and Gail pulled off on the other side, and he opened the door to his car to get out, and about that time, he looked across, and there was a guy with a gun, over the top of his car across the road, getting ready to shoot, and he shot, and the bullet hit left a crease on Gail's neck, and busted the windshield, and the window, and there he was opening the door, and that glass all crashed back into his eyes. Yeah, and all that glass picked out of his eyes. He shot when he saw a guy across there getting ready to shoot him. He shot across through the inside of that car and had that guy in military someplace. And the fellow,
I was back in the late 60s. I was back in the late 60s, wasn't I was a kid when I remember being getting shot.
like I say, they spent 2 or 3 hours taking out all the glass out of his eyes and all of that. But he killed the guy.
Did he get an award for that too? I thought I remember.
He got a thing from the President of the United States. Kind of a flag.
How old was he when he retired?
Around 68, 69.
So we got our union contract right now.
Well,
Yeah.
I had a cancer of the colon when I was 70 years old, and I knew it was serious, and I was in the hospital, and they had things going down through my throat. They would feed me that way, and also had a place down in here where they would draining my intestines. And I thought at the time the Bible said 70, a lot of for a man to live. That's in the Bible, and I was 70 years old, so I figured my time could be up by then.
No.
But I'm still here.
Now, when the girls were born, you had said that your aunts were identical twins. What were their names?
I thought it was his uncles.
Or uncles, maybe it was my aunts.
They weren't identical twins.
Okay.
But, one was tall and slim, and the other was short and
Stubby. Oh, what were their names?
well, it was Carl and Earl. Carl was the short, stubby one. He was well, both of them. One was an apprentice to a meat market, and the other was apprentice to can't remember what he was apprentice to. Oh, he was. Anyhow, they were twins, and each one was apprenticed. And I know that Carl, he was apprenticed to a meat market. And Earl, I forget what he was apprenticed to. And that was one way of getting your education.
Were they close to your age, same age as you, or were they much older? Like
No,
older aunts or older uncles?
My uncles, I had an aunt was only 10 years older than me, and the uncles, twins, but they were, that would have made them about 12 years old.
Okay, not too much older then. Were they your mom or dad's brothers and
They
sisters?
were my mother's.
Okay. Well, that's neat.
What was the first car you ever had? How old were you?
Well, I was about 17 or 18 when I got my first car. It was a Model T Ford.
Do you remember how much it was?
$100.
Wow.
Used or was that brand new?
No, it was used.
know that feeling.
Us either.
I've had one new car, and it got hit somebody broadside 3 months after we brought it brand new.
Yeah.
So, never was the same after that. We've been used cars people since.
Well, I had a new car, we was coming home from down to Liberty. Jumped on the road, and they sideswiped my car, and just caved in and back to the whole side of the car. I was able to pull it out, you know. I was never able to make it look like a brand new car.
Right. Ours leaked like crazy every time it rained. Had the car for 5 years after that.
Why don't you pull that
Oh, I'm fine. I've been
wheel
sitting
thing
too
around
long.
there? That's a comfortable seat in there.
It looks like it. I've been sitting for much too long this last couple days, so standing, I stand most of the day, and it's odd to sit, so.
So in all your years, what's the most impressive new invention that you've seen come around?
Most impressive new invention.
Sure.
Well, probably the automobile.
Yeah.
I remember first automobile that I rode in would look like a horse led in a buggy. Had a motor down underneath. I think it was an old Haynes motor. Down underneath, it had wheels, big wheels like an old-fashioned buggy. And I got to ride one like that when I was a kid.
You got any questions?
My first car probably was Ford Model T.
Yeah.
Get a picture of her right in the room.
That was scary. Were you amazed by the car? Were you amazed by the first car that you ever rode in?
Where I was
Were you amazed?
amazed.
Yeah. Like, excited about the car?
Oh, well, yeah, the first car I got, I bought a Ford, and it had been sitting on their roof, and it was a used Ford, and so they said, "Do you want to drive it home?" I said, you drive it outside the door here, so if I get it out on the street, I'll drive it home. My dad was with me, and so I got a hold of it from Model T that had 3 pedals on the floor, and I knew that you had the clutch, and then one was a brake, and one was a clutch, and one was a backup pedal, and so my dad was with me, and he didn't have a car yet, and so I got it out on the street, and I drove almost all the way up there in low gear.
And you didn't have to have a driver's license then, did you?
No, not at that time, but I had to have a license for the car,
Oh,
and
okay.
then the driver's license came out later on.
What about, did you, like, how old were you when you got your first driver's license then?
Well, didn't need a driver's license when I first started to drive. That came probably 10 years after my first car. We had to have a driver's license.
You once told me a story about you almost made it on the vaudeville circuit as an accordion player.
Well, I had a chance to, the guy wanted me to go out and play on a vaudeville circuit from San Francisco clear on up to Indiana.